welcome to a special Game Boy video following the NES and SNES one I did. Of course, this one, well, for the NES and Super Nintendo videos, I primarily only covered the games I played at the time. For Game Boy, not so many. Back, hardly any. Not that I did, like the Game Boy, just like I've said before, staring at that 2" by 2" black and white or black and pale green screen for more than an hour always gave me a headache, literally. And again, it couldn't have been just coincidence because it happened every time, not just some isolated thing, but any time and every time, more than an hour. Okay, that's it. So needless to say, I didn't get into many Game Boy games at the time. Not until years later on either PC emulation or 3DS Virtual Console. This is one of the ones I definitely would have. It's a Zelda game, But no, by the time I played this game, the DX version was already out, so never did play the black and white original. Not that there's much difference between it and the Game Boy Color remake, Link's Awakening DX. The DX version adds a color dungeon where you can go through it and decide if you want a blue tunic for better defense or a red tunic for better offense attack power, and that silly photo option, which got replaced for the recent Switch version of the game in favor of Dampy's Dungeon Maker idea. Good game, but if I'm going to play it these days, it'll be the Switch version. All of the, with the exception of the photo ops, all of the stuff from the DX version is still there. The color dungeon, the choice of tunics, depending on if you want more attack power or more defense, is still there. A lot more heart containers, which you don't always have to get all of. Which, people like to say the Switch version is too easy because of all the extra heart pieces you can find making all those extra heart containers. Well, if that's the way you feel about it, just don't find all those extra heart pieces. Problem solved. But no, the main reason I prefer the Switch version is because the Pegasus boots, the shield, and I think the Power Glove is automatically equipped always. Less going back and forth into the menus throughout the course of the game. More convenient. This version of the game and in the DX alike, you spend a lot of time. You need the power bracelet for one screen, you need the Pegasus boots for another, the glove for one. Yeah, you're always, seems like every other screen, you're going into the menus to swap out some item for another one. Which, you get used to after a while playing Zelda games, sure, but it's nice when they make a version of the game where you don't have to do that quite as much. Of course, with this version of the game, I've heard there's some screen transfer glitch that you can really use to break the game sequence-wise. I don't know too much about that since, again, I never played this version of the games, or maybe once or twice, but didn't get too far because of the headache issue. And again, people have asked why I didn't just get the Game Boy, Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo, where you put the Game Boy cartridge into it, and then you put it into the Super Nintendo, kind of like a Game Genie. To be honest, I don't know if I just didn't hear about that until much later, or since there were only a couple of Game Boy games I would have really wanted to play anyways, I just didn't think it was worth it. Oh. It's the damn owl from Ocarina of Time. Well, actually, this came out before Ocarina, but... And yes, by the way, story-wise, I don't think this is supposed to be the exact same owl. It just works the same way. He's always there to give you hints and annoy you. If you played the game before and don't need his hints, then that's where the annoyance comes in. It's like, dude, I already know that. I have played this game before. And at least unlike Ocarina of Time, at least in this game, he doesn't have that infinite dialogue loop potential. Did you get that? Yes or no? And the answer you want to give him is always at the bottom of the list. So if you're just mashing the buttons, at least you don't have any of that crap in this game. Yeah. I'll probably do a playthrough of this game one of these days, but if I do, it'll either be the DX version or possibly maybe even the Switch version if I ever get a capture card. Of course, if that ever happens, and this game wouldn't be the first Zelda game I do a playthrough of on the Switch. It'd be Breath of the Wild, obviously. Of course, for me, this music always reminds me of the Oracle games. I mean, I know it should be the other way around, had I played these games more in release order. But again, because of the headaches issue, I didn't play too much of this game at the time. And by the time I did really get into this game, I had already played the 2 Oracle games on the Game Boy Color, which used a lot of the same music from this game. So yeah, chronologically, you'd say that the other way around, the Oracle games sound like this one, but for me, no. So. Anyways. Oh, I hate when it does that. Anyways, the other Game Boy game I would have played a lot of had it not been for the headaches issue, the second Metroid game. So I loved the the first game on the NES. Played it so many times. In Super Metroid, well, that's even better in my opinion. I mean, I know, like any game, the rating of it depends on who you talk to. Some people don't really like it. But with a game like Super Metroid, I've met very few people who don't like the game, so. But yeah, this game never did play much of, at least not at the time. Did complete it years later on emulator. Then of course the 3DS remaster, or reimagining basically is same game in theory, but looks a lot different. The levels are rearranged and so. But yeah, that's the version of the game I really prefer. I mean, this original is okay, but definitely, suffers from no in-game map. I mean, I got used to that with the NES version of the first game not having a map because of how many times I played it, like I've said before. Played the original game so many times. I have the map memorized to this day. I don't have that with this one, so. When I do a playthrough of this game, I'm going to be getting lost a lot. That's why I'm not looking forward to that one. Either that or looking up, just looking up an online map if I get too lost, so it's not to waste viewer time watching me stumble through the same areas over and over again. But yeah. Of course, there's also either Super Mario Land 1 or Tetris. One of the 2 games that the system came with, depending on when you bought yours back in the day. Mine came with Tetris. Alright, oh, wait a minute, get back up there. Ah, crapola. Oh, that's kind of sadistic the way they space those out, so you can just drop down like that. End up all the way back down at the bottom. Yeah, overall, this is a good game, but unless you're really nostalgic, I'd recommend either the fan-made AM2R remake or the official 3DS Samus Returns one. This original only if you're really nostalgic or just curious as to what the game looked like originally, which would be kind of nostalgic, well, sort of. Oh shoot, I see. Okay, yeah, I'm supposed to. Dang it, I goofed on that again. Shoot that. Oh wait a minute, I forgot. I could also do that. There's another way I could do that. I forgot I have Spider Ball already in this file. Not used to having that because usually, you know, this is like one of the few games, at least amongst the ones that I've played, where you have this option. So I tend to forget that it's even a thing. Well, this just goes back anyways. See what I mean about getting lost? Yeah, this is definitely one of those games I could have used an in-game map. But anyways, yeah. Of course, I've always wondered, in regards to this game, there's two things I've always wondered. One, why this was on the Game Boy in the first place and not the Super Nintendo. Since this came out in late '91, the Super Nintendo had already been out for a few months by then, so it could have been on the SNES. And two, why, unlike Link's Awakening, why this game never got a DX remaster. Link's Awakening did. Why not this one? I think they were made by the same studio. I know they were both on Nintendo Game Boy, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. A lot of third-party developers made games for Game Boy. But yeah, this game didn't get a remake until 1998 or 2016, 2017 rather. Thinking Link's Awakening when I said 98, but yeah. Until 2017, the aforementioned Samus Returns on the 3DS. More than a decade and a half later. Yeah. Yeah. Alright. So yeah, that's about it for the original Game Boy. I mean, I know it's a legendary system in terms of handheld portable gaming devices. But again, I never really got into too many of the games at the time, and even when I started to, there's not a whole lot I've really wanted to try. So for original Game Boy, yeah, not a lot to say. It was legendary for its impact on the handheld gaming market, or however you want to put that. But eh. All right, Super Mario on Game Boy. Oh, Super Mario Land, but back in the day, I would have loved this. Played the original couple Super Mario Brothers games so many times. Having it on a portable system would have been divine had it not been for the headaches issue. Yeah. Oops, I forgot that one up there. Dang it. Of course, there were three games in this series at least. This one, Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins, and Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3 on the original Game Boy. I know of those three, and I have them all three on my 3DS Virtual Console. But Anyways, of course, I loved the NES game Kid Icarus. I even showed part of it in my video for NES games. I always wondered why there was never a sequel, or little I knew. Yeah, little did I know there was a sequel to it, but it was on Game Boy, so I never really thought to look. Till years later, anyways. Yeah, many years later, when I was looking at Game Boy games on Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console. Saw this just after getting a 3D Classics reimagining remaster of the original NES one, but like, wait a minute, there was a sequel? Okay, I never knew about that. So yeah, I haven't really played this much. Again, 80s me would have loved this. How many times I played the NES first game. Had I only known it existed at the time. Yeah, it's even got these. Well, we can't shoot. I need more hearts. Okay, yeah, it's the same thing in the NES version. But yeah, just another one of many games I missed out on. What do you mean you don't die? But too bad that could have been the case in the NES game. Die like that, you don't just fall back to where you were before. You just die. Once all these platforms you're standing on disappear at the bottom of the screen, they're gone for good. Damn, backwards scrolling, although it's annoying having to work your way back up, would have been a nice touch for the NES game. I mean, I swear, half the times I die in the NES game is because of that, mistiming a jump and falling. And instead of landing back and having to retrace my steps, just dead. But that's it. That was fast. Shorter stage. Of course, it is a Game Boy game, but yeah. Anyways, I might do a playthrough of this game sometime, but before I do, I have to do a playthrough of the first game, but yeah. Anyways, yeah, as usual, not going to spend too much time on one game when there's a lot of them, so. Alright. This one, of course, is a game I've never played, even in recent years on 3DS, Virtual Console, or PC emulation. But I remember the title there always bugging me. Castlevania 2. Wait a minute, that was Simon's Quest on the NES. By the time this game came out, we already had Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, also on the NES. So I was like, what do you mean 2? We going backwards in chronology now? What? Yeah. So yeah, the synchronicity has always bugged me. Why is this part 2? I mean, I get it. It's a sequel to the other game, the first Game Boy game, The Adventure. So hence Dracula 2 or Castlevania 2 on Game Boy. But the only thing I could think of in contrast to compare to that would be for those into 60s rock, the Beatles American discography. How the album titled Beatles' second album was actually their third, but second for Capitol Records being the gimmick there. But second game for Game Boy here, so yeah. Even though they already had, you get the idea. But yeah, I've never played this game, and I don't know. I might someday if I completely run out of other. I mean, if you like this game, to each their own. But eh, I just wanted to bring up the title of it for the most part. Castlevania 2. I mean, again, I get it. So you don't have to comment in the trying to explain that. I get it. It's the second Game Boy Castlevania game, hence the title. Just having played the NES Castlevania 2 or Simon's Kurt. What? Yeah. Ugh, can't even think right now. Yeah. Simon's Quest. Anyway, as for I hate when it pauses like that. Of course, the first Castlevania game on the Game Boy, the one that the other one is a sequel to, The Adventure, another game that even if I had played it at the time, I don't know if I would have really liked it. Is by the early okay, this was late 80s, so yeah, I might have still got into it at the time. But yeah, Castlevania 3, like I said in my NES, or not in my Castlevania series retrospective, Castlevania 3 is the game that made me lose interest in the classic style platforming Castlevania game for years to come. In fact, well, not so much now, but yeah. So yeah, I might have liked this for a short time, but I've seen playthroughs of this game and how brutal it can be. So I don't know. This might have been the game to kill my interest in the series before 3 had a chance to. But I mean, I just yeah. I mean, I've seen playthroughs of this game. Twitch streamer Agent Frowny. Uh, Derek at Game Explainer. It used to be for Game Explain. YouTube channel. Derek Bittner once did YouTube streams of the entire Castlevania series in release order. Yeah, he did a stream of this game. So yeah, doesn't look like a game I'd really like too much. I mean, I'd spend most of my time yelling vulgarities at the screen. So yeah, I'll pass on this one. I mean, if you like your extreme your brutally difficult games, well, there you go. All right, video. Oh no, not that. Yeah, or these games. I don't know how I missed these either. Of course, yeah. 1989. I actually have to look up that date. Hold on. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Did come out in North America until September of 1990. Didn't think so. I was gonna say, wait a minute. If this came out in 1989 here in the States, this came out before the first game in the main series did on the NES. That didn't come out until what, June, July 1990. Yeah, but no, September 1990, according to the Wikipedia article on the game. So yeah, that's probably how I missed this game. Because even if I had cared more about Game Boy games, I would have been, too focused on the first game in the main series on the NES. Trying to still see by September of 1990, yeah, I still would have been trying to get through that game on rental time. Failed attempt at that was before finally breaking down and buying my own copy of it. realizing I'm never going to get any real progress this way. By the time I can re-rent it, somebody else is going to rent it and erase my save files. And yeah. So yeah, if I had noticed this game, I probably would have been too preoccupied. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I have all three of these on, what was it, Saga, I think it was, collection on Switch. So, yeah. That's why I keep saying I got so many games I haven't even hardly played, let alone completed, between all the collections and like Sega collection that has so many Sega games and these. And oh, I hate when it does that. Anyways, that's about it for the original black and white Game Boy, or black and pale green, the original Game Boy. In '98, they came out with the Game Boy Color. Of course, one of the games on the Game Boy Color, Model 2 Game Boy, or however you want to look at that, is this. I've seen, who was it, Agent Frowny, yeah, stream this game once. Looks basically like a Game Boy rendition of the original NES. Kind of cool for a Game Boy game to be that close to the original. So for fans of the NES version, that want their Ghosts and Goblins on the go. Except for I never have been very good at this game. I mean, I did somehow manage to complete the first loop of it back in the day. How I ever did that, looking back at it, I don't know. I have it on my 3DS Virtual Console, the NES version anyway. And I can't even get past stage 3 anymore. Yeah. Before I rage quit. Which is kind of immature of me to do that, I know. But just something about games like this seem to bring out the worst in me. So if you like your challenging games, more power to you, but yeah. I'm not a fan of the one hit or two hits and you're dead. I mean, Mario games have that. I've heard that argument used before, yeah, but Mario games usually aren't this brutally difficult either. Usually. I mean, there may be exceptions to that, the exception to every rule saying, but anyways, yeah, I never played this game to this day. I mean, I played the NES version of this game, but not the Game Boy version. Yeah, if you like your Ghosts and Goblins on the go, well, there you go. Double go there, but of course, I already talked about this game in its original form, but Link's Awakening, one of the earlier games for the Game Boy Color, basically just a remaster, not a remake, as some people call it. It's still basically the same game. They just added the color dungeon and photos. Yeah. Otherwise, it's the exact same game, just colorized. Like I said, whenever I do get around to doing a playthrough of this game for my channel, it'll probably be this version, not the original colored one or the original black and white one. Yeah. DX. Of course, making this, by the way, chronologically the first Zelda game to get a remaster, remake. Yeah. First of many to follow. Yeah. Of course, this is a game that I play a lot of on my 3DS Virtual Console whenever I'm not playing one of the games made for the 3DS. A game I remember vaguely hearing about at the time. Somebody who used to live across the street or down just in the same neighborhood, not too far away, in the early 2000s, was a big Lufia fan. I never got into the series myself, but Lufia, The Legend Returns on Game Boy Color. Remembering how big a fan he was of the series, when I saw this on sale on 3DS Virtual Console, I bought it. Haven't really played much of it because it always reminds me of him, and yeah, since he died well, several years ago now, but yeah. But anyways, enough of my sad story flashbacks. This is not one of the games I played at the time. Heard of it, yes. Played it, not really. Someday I should try the Lufia series again. There's like, what, 2 of them on the SNES that I didn't even mention in my Super Nintendo video, so I didn't think of them. Oh yeah, because the purpose of that video was the games I've played, so they wouldn't have really fit. Anyways, another game that I never really played, series in general for that matter, but I did get it about 5-6 years ago now for 3DS Virtual Console. Yeah, I know, Pokemon is like big business for RPG fans, but I don't know. In the late 90s, early 2000s, it was just such a fad. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was collecting the cards, and it's like, really? How many of you people actually, Never mind, I'm not going to, that borders on being insultive, so let me just stop myself right there before I end up saying something I'll regret, but yeah. Just suffice to say, I never really got into the Pokemon series. In fact, this is the only game I own. Well, on 3DS Virtual Console, I don't own the physical cartridge, but yeah. I know, there's so many people say I should get into this series, or at least try to, but again, so many games, so little time. Of course, the other thing that's always bugged me about Pokemon is how, they release 2 games at the same time, yellow or blue and red, or what was it? I don't even remember the names, but yeah, there's always 2 games that come out at the same time. See, I mean, what's with that? No other series does that. Anyways, yeah, I mean, again, I know there's a lot of Pokemon fans out there, so don't mind me. I'm just not really big on the series, at least as of right now. Maybe sometime when I find the time to sit down and play one of the games, that might change, but for now, Of course, I already talked about these in detail in a special video I made about them, but these are definitely games, had I known about them back at the time, I definitely would have gotten into them. Dragon Warrior 1, 2, and 3 Game Boy Color remakes. I mean, criminy. If I'd have known about these at the time, like I just said, I definitely would have got into these. Dragon War, yeah. But yeah. Again, I don't know why I didn't, because they were technically Game Boy Color, but I just at the time viewed the Game Boy as just a moderate upgrade to the original, still not worth getting, so I never did get a Game Boy Color. Any other games on it, big deal, so I miss them or something. But yeah, I already covered these games in detail for that video based on them, so let's skip them for now. The highlight of the Game Boy Color library. released in May of 2001, literally just before the Game Boy Advance came out. Probably amongst the last Game Boy Color games to ever get a release, at least here in America. I mean, I'd have to look into that, so yeah. But given the timing involved, I would have to say, I mean, what? These came out in May of 2001. The Game Boy Advance came out in what? June, July of 2001? Something like that. Again, I'd have to look it up. But yeah. Oracle of Ages and Seasons, Zelda games. Again, granted, I've played only a handful of them and heard about, just a few more, so I'm not too familiar with the overall Game Boy Color library as a whole, but amongst those that I do know of, whether I played them or not, just know of them, these two would definitely be the highlight. And yes, primarily because they're Zelda games. I mean, it is my favorite gaming series of all time, hands down. I mean, I love Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy and Metroid, don't get me wrong, but Zelda's still the best series in my opinion, and probably always will be. Of course, I like the attention to detail here, the password system. Characters make cameo appearances, items can be brought over from, I'm going to do a playthrough of these games. One of the first Minish Cap. I mean, I just recently, as of right now, Sunday, October 30th, just recently uploaded the finale for my Link to the Past playthrough. So, do a playthrough of Minish Cap first, since I kind of said that was going to be the next game in the description for the Link to the Past finale. I left a message that my next Zelda game is going to be Minish Cap. So, after that, it will probably be these two games. And that about wraps up for the Game Boy Color portion of this. And now for the Game Boy Advance. Yeah, so many good games on that system. Like this one. Of course, I've already recorded a playthrough of this game. Haven't uploaded it yet, but Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. One of the 3 Castlevania games for the Game Boy Advance. The last of the 3 in release order. The best of the 3 in my opinion and preference. There's oh, they're all in that area? Ooh, wow, okay. Never mind. That'd be a huge spoiler. Never mind. Huge spoiler for anybody who hasn't played the game yet, where my location is. Just in front of close to the end of the game, so yeah. Alright, yeah. Of course. Alright, reset that. Still the same game, just normal, of course. Alright, hold on, let me skip past the... Alright, there. Skip past all the story and intro sequences for spoiler reasons. Yeah. As I point out many times in my full playthrough of the game when I start uploading it, the only real gripe I have with this game is the amount of time it takes to grind for all the ability souls. Yeah. And why, if you don't care for 100% completion, I wouldn't bother with it. I'd only get the ones that you really want and ignore the rest. But other than that, really good game if you like the Metroidvania style Castlevania games as I do. I mean, I've seen a lot of reviews where this is, one of the, if not the best game on the Game Boy Advance. And I would definitely agree with the one of the best claim. As for the best, no. It's not quite that good in my opinion, but yeah, you see what I mean? Just in the time I've been here doing this, still nothing. Well, yeah. So yeah. The amount of time it can take to get those ability souls can really be annoying, but any game has that. Any game that has item drops from enemies and locker raids and RNG, any game in that regard can be annoying, so I guess it's not too different there, but of course there's also this game, Circle of the Moon, which I do have on the Castlevania Advanced collection, but not a big fan of. The first of the 3 Castlevania Game Boy Advance games. And I have played it, just not, not a big fan of it. It's just, I might do a playthrough of it someday for the YouTube channel, but I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for that playthrough though. And of course, according to what I've heard, this game isn't even really considered canon anymore. I mean, it obviously was when they made it, so yeah. Just proves that they can change what is or isn't canon at the drop of a hat, Whenever whenever they want, they can change what is or isn't canon. I mean, I'm sure it was when they made this game. I'm sure they weren't sitting there saying, "Oh, we're going to make this non-canon game." Yeah. Unless it's made by a completely different developing team like Snake's Revenge for Metal Gear. That's always a possibility too, I guess. Anyways, of course, in the middle between Circle of the Moon and Aria of Sorrow, the second of the 3 Game Boy Advance Castlevania games, Harmony of Dissonance. And of course, I recently uploaded a playthrough of this whole game, so not much more to add to it that I didn't point out there. The game that rejuvenated my interest in the Castlevania series after all the extremely annoying platformer games, the so-called Classicvania games, and some of which, I mean, I admittedly have regained an interest in the first game in the series, but Castlevania 3, Castlevania 4, Rondo of Blood, Castlevania The Adventure, no. If you like those games, fine, but I never had much interest in those games in the first place to be rekindled. Unlike the first game where I had a lot of nostalgia for it, having played it so many times on rental time. But I never had that nostalgia for any of the other classic Mania games. Trying to play them again, if I had played them before, just brings back bad memories and frustration and anyways. Besides, I still prefer, even though I admit to, having my interest brought back in the first my interest in the first Castlevania game back again, but I still prefer the Metroidvania style games over the original classic ones, or however you want. Metroidvania over Classicvania. By far, not even a close competition there. I mean, you add these 3 games, plus Dawn of Sorrow, the sequel to Aria on the DS, and of course, Portrait of Ruin. Yeah. Or Ritual of the Night, which technically isn't a Castlevania game, but made in the style of the Metroidvania Castlevanias. Made by the same developing team, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I prefer the Metroidvanias. Anyways, again, since I've already done a full playthrough of this game, there's really not much more to add, so moving on. Final Fantasy. Yeah. The second series of remakes of these games, following the remakes of them for the Sony PlayStation, PS1 in the late 90s, early 2000s. Final Fantasy was back on the Nintendo system with the Game Boy Advance series of it, Final Fantasy Advance 1 and 2 on this, as you can see, with 4, 5, and 6 each getting their own advanced remaster remake. And to this day, these are the versions of the game that I always play. I mean, I guess I could recommend them, but other people could say I'm crazy. Of course, I already did a full playthrough of the first game using this version of it. Someday I'll get around to doing part 2. But as of right now, I'm still playing through Final Fantasy VII. Then following it will be Final Fantasy V for Final Fantasy games. And then 6. But for Final Fantasy VI, actually no, for Final Fantasy VI, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to play the Game Boy Advance remake or the SNES original. I mean, with the SNES original is Final Fantasy III, but other than the naming conflict, I don't remember there being too many big differences between the two. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, there's 5 Final Fantasy game remakes on Game Boy Advance. With this one to me being the best of them, Final Fantasy V, fixing the load times that a lot of people complained about with the PlayStation version of the game, and some of the dialogue. One of the main characters has less of a pirate dialogue in this version of the game, and one of the names is no longer Salsa like it was in the Sony version of the game. So anyways, yeah, after Final Fantasy VII, this will be the next Final Fantasy game I do. And in my opinion, this would be the best Game Boy Advance game. Well, if you count remakes. I mean, if you only count games exclusively, originally made for that system. Well, first of all, I think that's a little backwards, but in that case, my favorite Game Boy Advance game would be, the Minish Cap, the Zelda game for it. Well, one of 2 actually. There was 4 Swords, the first of the 2 4 Swords games that came with a remake of, or remaster of A Link to the Past. But yeah. Oops. Shoot. Dang it. Of course, having just recently completed A Link to the Past, like I said, this is going to be my next game I do. In fact, I'm going to do record the first video for that playthrough as soon as I'm done with this video. So, get started on this game. Of course, there's also this one. Speaking of remakes for the Game Boy Advance, a remake of the first Metroid game. Which, I sometimes will ridicule this game for being called Metroid, in my opinion, Metroid Zero Intellect, because of the way it's too hand-holdy. But, the hand-holdiness aside, it is a good remake. Fixing some of the issues of the NES original. Ice beam, wave beam compatibility, being able to crouch and shoot. For those who care, in-game maps. I mean, yeah, I can see your point there, but again, remember, I'm someone who played the original NES so many times. I remember to this day have the maps memorized. So when I'm playing this, the only time I really look at the maps is if I'm in an area that it wasn't in the original, that was added to this remake. But if I'm in areas that are still the same, I don't even need the maps. Yeah. Of course, I did a playthrough of the original for the channel. Sometime I'll go back and do a playthrough of this remake. And as I said in the playthrough for the original, I chose the original out of nostalgia value, but I'd really have to be nitpicky to decide which one I like more, the original or the remake, as they both have good and bad things about them, like any game. Yeah, for those who don't like, not having an in-game map, then obviously this would be the version of the game for you. And heck, I'd probably recommend this to any new Metroid fan anyways. I mean, the original is good, but I have a lot of nostalgia for it, whereas a lot of people probably wouldn't. So yeah, this would probably be the best version of the game in those cases. But if you're really nostalgic, the NES version still holds up in my opinion. It's a little dated by today's standards, yes, but what NES game isn't dated by today's standards? I mean, seriously. Anyways, of course, the other Metroid game on Game Boy Advance, well, Metroid 4 in production order, but more like Metroid 8 in storied order. Metroid Fusion came out in November of 2002, pretty much the exact same day as Prime did for the GameCube. Of course, a lot of story here, so spoiler alert. Well, actually, just basic story, so I guess it's not too much to worry about for spoilers. Anyways, good game, except for it's a little linear for my liking. Of course, the new game released last year, Dread, is basically the sequel to this one. So, and there's the title card. Good game, but damn, some of those last few bosses can get annoying. Just a couple mistakes and you're pretty well screwed. Yeah. Of course, it's that way with almost all of the bosses in Dread, in my experience. So, anyways, of course, I forgot about this game when I was talking about Game Boy Color games. So back up a bit. I do remember emulating this one because, like I said in my Metal Gear series retrospective, I saw the word Metal Gear Solid, and in a brief moment of sheer and utter stupidity, thinking it was the PlayStation game. Frickin' should have known right from the get-go. There's no way they were going to be able to put a PlayStation game on a Game Boy Color cartridge. Wasn't going to work. I should have known that right from the start. But brain fart or whatever you want to call those. Hey, I can play that game on. Oh, cool. Yeah. Idiot me. It's okay. Laugh. I laugh inwardly whenever I remember that myself. So go ahead, have a laugh on my stupidity. Actually thinking they could put a PlayStation game on a Game Boy Color cartridge. Yeah. I mean, that said, this is an okay game. I did get it. Once I realized it wasn't the game I was thinking it, I did play it and I did like it. But, of course, in Europe it's called Ghost Babel. I don't know why they didn't leave that title for the American version. But anyways. Yeah, I mentioned this game in my Metal Gear series retrospective video is a possible playthrough contender sometime down the line. Of course, it's again like the American Metal Gear 2 Snake's Revenge. It's not canon. Wasn't made by Kojima. And I don't think he had any knowledge of it until the game was already released, or at least I know that was the case with the American 2 Snake's Revenge. He was busy making the Japanese to the true sequel, Solid Snake, for the MSX2 computer at the time. But that's another reason I don't really get into that it is or isn't canon argument, because even though games like Snake's Revenge or this game aren't canon, doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad game. Just for whatever reason, they're not what they're not what in this case, what you'd say, hey, Hideo Kojima, they're not what where he wanted the story to go. They contradict his idea for the story, so therefore they're not canon. Doesn't necessarily mean they're bad games. Anyways, one more game. For the Game Boy Advance, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. Love this game. Easily the best Mario RPG game in my opinion. Better than RPG 7 Stars for the Super Nintendo. Better than the Paper Mario series. Yes, I said that on both counts. Better than the other Mario and Luigi games. This, in my opinion, actually rivals Super Mario Odyssey as the best Mario game in general. Just not this version of it. I prefer the 3DS. In fact, I never even really heard about this game until the 3DS remake came out in late 2017, and around the same time Mario Odyssey did for the Switch. Yeah. I mean, I have went back and played this original version of the game, but not a big fan of it. Anyways, that's about it for the Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. With, to me, the Game Boy Advance being the best out of the three, but of course I think most people would agree with that sentiment. Most people, some would argue. There's always going to be somebody that, whether they're just genuinely arguing or just trying to do so just for the sake of being, sarcastic, almost said sadistic, wrong emotion, just for the sake of being sarcastic, Anyways, yeah, that's about it. Let's, of course, just watch. I'm calling it now. As soon as I stop the video, and as I'm watching it for quality check purposes, that's when I'll remember some game that I should have mentioned. Like, oh crap. Yeah. Oh well, chance I'm gonna have to take, I guess. Thanks as always for watching, and see you next time. Now end this video and start the Minish Cap series. Bye.